All right, thank you everybody for coming. It's great to see so many people turn out in the flesh, and we're looking forward to a great event. And we'll hopefully get Tim to mute his mic, his speakers there. So tonight, what we thought we'd do is have a panel discussion and invite some esteemed industry experts up to talk about their journeys. We are streaming tonight, so we have got the online recording going through WebEx, and we'll also post a recording of this, assuming everyone's okay with that. We can talk about that afterwards. A quick housekeeping note: if you do need to go to the bathroom, there are a set of lanyards there that will get you into the building. Looks like we're mostly gents here. We've got to work on our diversity, but the gents' toilets are first, just on the left-hand side down the corridor. Ladies, it's a bit further on. I'd like to start with our acknowledgement of the traditional owners of this land and pay our respects to their elders past and present. And thank, in particular, the people that make this happen. So we're a community of 4 organizers, and the time that we give up is generously donated by our respective companies. So we'd like to thank them for making these events possible. And tonight, Telstra Purple have kindly put on the venue, the lovely food and the drinks. If you haven't had a drink, please feel free to stand up, fill your glasses up. Equally, if you haven't had a bite to eat, you're welcome to get up and go there. I'd also like to offer Alex an opportunity just to address everybody and say hello.
That's very kind of you, Dario.
Just talking to the mic so we can hear you, mate.
Oh, I don't think I need one of those. So I only popped up for a drink and then realised I might want to have a chat with a whole bunch of people that are here. So, hey, I'm Alex. I work for Telstra Purple. Yeah, we're doing lots at the moment. So formerly known as Redify. So that's probably the more conventional name that you would know us for. Crowley will tell you all about it. He loved his time with us. Yeah, we are. We're really keen to chat to anyone who wants to have a bit more of an idea about what we are up to. There's a QR code just over there on the screen. Not this one. That's a different QR code, but that one. And then one of our talent acquisition people will be in touch. And no pressure. Just come and have a chat, have a drink. Not that we do that all the time. Yeah, or come and have a chat with me. Trent Steenholt is around as well. I would say Dario, but he now works for this mob. So obviously, if you want to have a chat to Dario about his organisation, you should do that too. Cheers.
Cool. Thanks, Alex. All right. So I'm trying to move very quickly because I'm kind of conscious of time and getting through the questions and also making opportunities for our audience members to ask some questions. As I said, tonight we have a series of people joining our panel to talk about their experiences in cloud adoption or being in the cloud as you may be. And in no particular order, I'd just like to introduce people. So Mark Radford is the platform lead at Synergy. Wave your hand, Mark.
Hello.
David Eddy is the CTO at AgWorld and previous speaker at DevOps Perth. Rob Crowley is the head of engineering at Vix Technology. And we've got Rich Bean representing government here from the Department of Water and Environmental Regulation. And Billy Martin, who is unfortunately obscured on that screen, but Billy is the head of technology strategy and architecture at HBF. Cool. So I thought that we would run through a little bit about each of these gentlemen and their organization's journeys. And I kind of wanted to steer the conversation around sort of 5 main aspects. Talking about the drivers that led them to move to the cloud. We'll then talk a bit about the approach, the results they've seen, successes, maybe some lessons learned, and then what are their next steps for the future. So it's going to be a little bit organic. I'll ask questions. We'll try and get everybody responding. We won't necessarily have people responding to every question. But yeah, I guess I'll ask Rich to kick us off. Rich has moved, this is his 3rd government agency where he's helping customers move to the cloud. And Rich, maybe if you can share some of the drivers for the department and what led them to consider moving assets and workloads to the cloud.
Sure. Well, first of all, it's some days it's Groundhog Day. So yeah, we have this is my third agency that we're progressively moving to the cloud, mainly in the Azure space, right? So whether it's Microsoft 365 or really Azure, right? So infrastructure as a service, platform as a service. The big drivers are efficiencies, not so much cost, right? Because we all know that cloud is not cheap, regardless of what all the marketing stuff says, right? If you don't manage it properly, then it gets very expensive. But the efficiencies, the innovation, the ability to respond quickly was a big driver for us. Also for our people, right? I guess the big thing for me in cloud is so that our people come along on the journey and we train them so that they're skilled in cloud and DevOps and all that. Because if we don't train them as government employees to do that, then we're just going to get further left behind, and then that'll impact service delivery on that we're supposed to be doing for everybody, right? It's taxpayers' money, and it's your services, right? So if we can't deliver better services, then I'm not doing my job. So that's really the big drivers for me.
Cool. Rob, can you maybe tell us a bit about Vix and your position? Are you currently using cloud technologies? How's that sort of been driven by your business need and endeavors?
Yeah, absolutely. So at Vix, we've been building transport solutions for cities for about 30 years. So that would be everything a city needs to operate its trades, its buses, maybe it's even its Uber paratransit services. So back in the old days, everything for our cities would have been bespoke builds. So we would have taken all of our code, put it together, and deployed it into our customers' data centers. So everything was bespoke from the start right through to the finish. So about 6 years ago, what we saw is that the cost of delivery was incredibly high. The speed of change was incredibly slow. And typically when we'd finished one of these 3 to 5 year projects, the customer actually wanted something else. So we looked again as how can we reduce this, again, the Groundhog Day of delivery. So again, it's very much moving to a SaaS-based model, which would then have a common set of functionality, which we can then configure for a particular customer, but rather a bespoke from the scratch. Here's again a constrained set of capabilities that you can have. So that was really then what started our view from there. So cloud for us was really a necessity. We saw that we couldn't compete on price with bespoke builds, and it wasn't delivering the customer satisfaction that we wanted. And it's pretty darn difficult to build a product with a feedback loop. So that's, again, getting into the cloud. We mainly took a rehosting strategy. I can talk about a little bit more later. If we had our time over, we would look more at refactoring certain key components. Definitely, we carried more tech debt through in that journey than we probably should have. And we failed to tackle some of the maintainability of our code. So again, there were some of the initial views from there. But as with any cloud transformation, it started with the business and a business imperative, and then the technology strategy being dovetailing to amplify the delivery of that.
Excellent. Yeah, Billy, can you share your experiences with HBF? I know you're currently on quite a big transformation journey in the organization. So what has sparked that, and where on that continuum are you at this stage?
Yeah, so very similar to the guys. We pretty much were 95% on-prem when we started. We had the same drivers, scalability, flexibility, being able to release software and applications to our members more frequently. We wanted to use cloud-native services more frequently. So we did take a bit of a different approach to Vix. We did go for a re-architecting strategy. Not really through choice, but just by timing. So the fact that we had to replace all of our major applications, everything. So like HBF, we are replacing everything from top down. We're replacing our digital tier, website, member self-service portals, replacing the CRM, replacing our integration tier, so typical service bus with kind of AWS native integration in .NET. We're replacing the core insurance application. We're replacing the analytics tier. I don't know. I'm pretty stressed, you can see, but it's like pretty much nothing. Yeah. So we did very much take that re-architecting approach. So we are looking at infrastructure as code across the board in AWS. We're looking for automation wherever we can find it. And yeah, look, it's a journey, but we'll probably talk about that. We will do re-hosting next. So we are in the middle of forming our kind of next 3 years with AWS. We're working on the strategy for re-hosting of all the COTS applications that are left. There are some left. in the end. And we'll look at rehosting there. But pretty much what we're working on now is re-architecting our entire stack from top to bottom.
Cool. So Dave, you mentioned before that your company is basically born in the cloud and you've been using cloud from day one. Is that an accurate statement? And sort of, help us understand your position and how you're adopting cloud tech.
Yeah, sure. So AgWorld, we're a software as a service. Our service is for growers and farmers. And about 11 years ago, AgWorld was founded as a startup. And really just, I think 11 years ago, why wouldn't you just host a few servers in the cloud? Like it's not really a decision you would go any other way. And so we've always just been in the cloud. It's not something that really crossed our mind. We don't really think about it. We don't think, oh, we're in the cloud. It's just where we do all our work. In terms of what that means for us in terms of going forward, so we mostly focus on capabilities, software delivery, continuous delivery. How do we get better at what we do? And being in the cloud doesn't magically give you that. So you got to focus on how you organize yourselves. How do you get continuous improvement happening? Those kind of things is where we put our energy, so that the cloud gives us the potential to use the tools that are there to get those benefits. So yeah, it's a quick summary.
Your service is consumed as a SaaS to customers?
Yeah, so we're a SaaS.
Yeah. Yep.
We've also got an app which obviously talks over the web.
Cool. Cool.
So we're in the cloud. We're a cloud service.
Nice. So Mark, Synergy is a large organization. It's got lots of different applications and workloads. And I know through working with you that you've sort of got this mixed mode of cloud adoption. Some of your services are cloud native effectively, but also know that you're transitioning some of your workloads in a rehost model to the cloud. Can you maybe talk a bit about some of the reasons for that? The reasons for the two approaches.
The initial adoption was somewhat organic. It was kind of developer led. It was that wanting to try new things, wanting to sort of push the boundaries a little bit. Developers are really good for that. Oh, new shiny code. I want to do that. So our first sort of foray into the cloud was actually using PaaS services to host our main website. There are a few other small applications that were sort of similarly done that way. And that also involved, an overhaul of our development practices in terms of DevOps as well. We finally went, oh, we can do infrastructure as a service. We can actually, spin up environments. And although it's not as mature as I would like it to be, it is moving in that direction in leaps and bounds. We then kind of paused because we don't have that many applications that fit that model. A lot of our applications are really ingrained, they're Windows servers that you install a vendor application on and then connect to the network and all the rest of it. So we spent quite a bit of time working with partners to build a sort of environment, a footprint, and we call it our foundations environment. And we've now been doing that lift and shift approach for a lot of these servers. And the driver for that has been cost avoidance. We have a rather large looming CapEx spend approaching for servers that are about to, keel over and die. So we don't want to buy as many as we would do otherwise. So we're shifting to the cloud in that sense. So that's sort of the drivers and how we started that journey and sort of, I guess, the path we're on at the moment.
Cool. Great. So I'd like to get into a bit of the approach in terms of how you tackle it. So we've heard some people call out that they're following a rehost strategy. Some people are, using cloud native services, building SaaSes and PaaS. What drives the selection? How have you made some of those decisions? Rob, you got the mic. Let's go out of order.
So, are there specific people?
No, go ahead.
Well, I've ruined it now anyway. So as I mentioned at the start, so our core product was effectively designed to run in individual data centers. So the whole thing was quite tightly coupled. So when I joined about 18 months ago, I did look at how the teams were organized. And very much from there, I just read team topology. So I had all the ideas about stream teams and enabling teams. And of course, I copied it 100%. What I did see, though, is, again, having teams that were built mainly around components. We saw that teams were very much focused on outputs and not the business outcomes. So the first thing was aligning teams towards the business verticals, but also recognizing where in your business do you want to be able to innovate and versus where do you want to be able to just maintain and care for it. So we, again, what I mentioned, we followed a replatforming approach for, I guess, the core of our application. Over the course of the last 3 to 4 years, everything we've done in terms of the customer channels have then been with the view of make it completely autonomous and then devolve the accountability for doing releases, operation, debugging, when it breaks in production into those teams themselves. So we actually have 2 modes. So probably the first word is saying DevOps is meaningless, right? It means everything and nothing. So you really have to understand what models you have in your organization and understand exactly, to Dave's point, the people, process, and tech that will make it work. So at Vix, we have 2. So we have one model for the core of Pulse, where we have multiple teams that can build features independently, but they all release together. And we do have a cloud ops model that follows an SRE based. If you read the book from Google around, they got a core shared services from there. But then with the teams where we really want to innovate, that then we have them being the full kind of 360 on that as well. So it should not be noted that it's the same process. So in other words, the accountabilities is just the responsibilities for doing the tasks that change between the 2 models. In one case, it's the kind of the core cloud ops team, the SREs, and then the other, it's actually devolved into the teams themselves.
Awesome. Billy, so you've mentioned that you're embarking on this change. How much have you had to change the way that your teams are structured in order to be able to drive some of the successes, or basically get your ways of working together so that you can deploy solutions?
So majorly.
Yeah.
I think the program's running at about 250 to 300 people at the moment across the board, partners, HBF staff, the vendors themselves. So we followed kind of basic Spotify model as a starting point. So we went tribes, and we went squads, we went chapters across the board. That has evolved over time. We've probably changed it 3 or 4 times now, but essentially we're still in that model. So we have delivery squads. They are asset focused squads at the moment. So we have like a Salesforce squad that's broken up into 2. The kind of staff console, we call it, which is the kind of employee area that they go in. And then we've got marketing automation, which is the Salesforce product we're putting in as well. We've got a website squad, we've got an app, etc. And then we have the chapters that go across. So we have kind of development, architecture, testing, cybersecurity, design, UI, UX, and they all cross cut. So very much typical kind of Spotify model, squads focused on an outcome and a delivery, and chapters that ensure quality and consistency across. So that's our transformation tribe. As I said, it's grown. It's a hell of a lot bigger than we thought it would be going in. Eventually, that will drive the new ways of working. So if we kind of talk about kind of our approach to new ways of working, I think the transformation program that we're running has kind of driven that kind of agile mindset. We are changing the ways of working as a business. The transformation program then is kind of driving that DevOps culture across the transformation at least, and that will spread as we move. And then things like CI/CD and the processes there are driving that kind of constant release and update process that we want. So kind of all 3 things are important to overall transformation. That's what we're going for.
How have your teams adopted to so much change going on? You know, you're talking about, you know, the different structures you've put in place, the different technologies, everything, you know, that sounds like a melting pot of, you know, things moving under my feet. And you may have people who've been with the organization, I'm assuming, people who've been with the organization for some time, some new hires. That sounds like a pretty challenging and changing environment to manage.
I think really well. I think we still have that kind of BAU and transformation divide. We are bringing that together now. The closer these assets get, and we've got kind of a couple of assets live already, the closer we get to bringing that together, the better, because there is still that divide across kind of BAU and transformation program. Mm-hmm. It's not a nice kind of divide to have. Everyone's okay in their own buckets, but we really want to bring it back together. I think I've seen amazing journeys from certain people. If I just pick one of our product owners came in, and every conversation I had with a guy, and he would laugh now with me, but every conversation I'd have with him, he would talk about the business do requirements and the technology people, you just go and build it and then give it back to us. And that has changed now. So now that product owner is now living it. I hear SDLC coming out of his mouth. I hear DevOps coming out of his mouth. It's amazing to watch. So I think we're definitely making improvement, but a long way to go. But would definitely bring in tech and kind of business together. So those cross-functional teams are really starting to drive benefits for us.
Right. Thanks. Right. Shift to Rich. You mentioned that you've tackled a rehost approach. Along similar lines, how have you faced the challenge of having people equipped to help move to the cloud? To what extent have you relied on partners and external suppliers? And have you adapted to any organizational transformation that needs to come along with it?
Yeah, so listen to the stories of 200 people makes me extremely jealous. As a government agency, we just don't have that capacity to hire 200 people just cause, right? So I think for government agencies, it's really important to find a partner. And we've engaged some great partners in the past, right? All the way from, well, JB's not here. But so from Ignia, which then got poached by Insight, then JB went to Microsoft, and Trent then left Insight and went to Redify, who then got sucked up by Telstra. Look, and this is the Perth market, right? We're a small town, and I'm from New York City, so it's a small town. So it's been really important to me to find good partners. And by good partners, I don't mean ones that are just going to do everything for me, right? And for my people, for my staff, they need to be done with instead of done to. And always keeping that, that transfer of knowledge. And I'll tell you the hard bit about that is because we're small and we're a government agency. Okay, whoever, John, you're on this transformation project to move to the cloud and re-platform stuff from on-prem infrastructure to platform as a service, and we're going to refactor. And oh, by the way, you've got all these audit stuff to do, and you've got BAU, and you've got break fix stuff to do, and don't ever work more than 7.5 hours a day, right? So that's always a challenge, right? And by the way, this is a brand new technology, and you better learn how to do CI/CD. And oh, you've never heard of Git? Well, congratulations, now you do, right? So I guess from a government perspective, it's really important to find a good partner that will impart that knowledge, not just do things for you. Has been my big thing, and anybody who's ever worked with me would know that, because if you just do something for someone, then guess what? All you're doing is creating tomorrow's legacy application, right? If you're not imparting that knowledge, then people aren't learning. So that has to be a big portion of moving to the cloud. And like I said, changing to agile squads, and we just developed an application, a CRM application with the business, right, using agile. And the business initially freaked out, right? Because what do you mean I have to come to stand up every day? What the hell is that, right? No, you guys just go build it, right? What do you mean I have to make a decision or come to a retro or prioritize what you want me to build, right? So bringing the business along is really important in that aspect. And then for the IT teams to kind of see that and see it work and watch and listen to the stakeholders and say, wow, that's awesome, right? But yeah, you got to have good partners to do it. When I was at DLGC, we brought in an agile coach. We set up a lot of our staff to be certified Scrum Masters, whether, myself, I did a bunch of stuff in SAFe, and now we're doing a bunch of stuff based on the SAFe model, like it or hate it, right? It doesn't matter. Everything's just a model. But yeah, you just need partners to help us when you're smaller, right? Because I wish I could hire 200 people. Can I have some of that? Can I have some of that budget? But look, okay, just pay for 200 people to come in.
So just touching on that, you mentioned that you got skilled up in some of the process, and how much technology skilling up or knowledge transfer have you required there to be sort of self-sustaining as an agency moving or in the cloud?
Look, I think we're getting there in the self-sustaining thing. For example, everyone's using, Azure boards, right? So we have a single backlog of work across project work and BAU work. It's just a single backlog, and that's separated out by teams and an area paths, blah blah blah, right? But it's making work visible. We've trained everyone in ICT, or we call it ISB, in Scrum for Teams, so that we can be sustainable. There's a ton of information out there and courses out there that we are absolutely investing in our people, right? So that they can upskill, because otherwise we're screwed, right? Just like I said, all we're doing, if we don't upskill our people, all we're doing is creating tomorrow's legacy applications. Yeah, and it's hard because, by the way, you're doing that BAU work and that project work, and here's a 5-day course in Azure Data. Right, get on it. And by the way, don't forget about your BAU shit. Right? So yeah, it's hard, but you have to do it. You have to suck up the productivity hit, right, in order to grow your people.
Mark, any sort of similar comments from yourself based on Synergy's journey and maybe operating in a similar environment there? The reliance on external help, plus maybe the internal upskilling.
For sure. I mean, I kind of thought, Rich is stealing my thunder. That's exactly what I was going to say. To a very similar degree. So we have, managed service partners, delivery partners, and you're right. We're technically not a government agency. We kind of are. It's that weird middle ground, kind of, sort of ish. Yeah. But we face a lot of the similar sort of challenges. We've also been on a transformation journey around how the business works, especially in TNT, our IT department. Again, chapters, tribes, squads, the whole delivery model, same again. We probably have different chapters to what you described, and that's just the way the cookie crumbles in these things. And yeah, it's been a big journey in how we sort of approach that type of, I guess, delivery and bettering the business. And interesting, I agree with you. We kind of worked with a few business units first around bringing the business on board for this, and they were all for it. So, our retail business unit really dived in. They sort of, I don't know if they saw the value in it or whether they had somebody who sort of really drove it from their side as well. But yeah, they sort of really jumped in headfirst, product owners from their cross-functional tribes and so on, and teams. And I'm getting all the words wrong because I'm really bad at that. But it has been quite the journey. But yeah, a lot of what you said is rung true there.
Awesome. So David, you run a product company. I think your approach has been a little bit different, but you're still relying on people who grapple with technology. And we're moving in a pretty fast-paced world and environment. How have you sort of responded to that change? Maybe also some changes to demands of your products from your customers. How's that impacted your business?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's worth talking about continuous improvement and how we think about that, and cloud can fit into that. But again, it's about capabilities. What are the bottlenecks? And we want our teams and everyone to think about continuous improvement. And we think if you want to ask teams to improve, you also have to give them time. So, for example, our delivery teams, we've got like a 25% rule where they should be investing 25% of their time on getting better and improving. And we also focus very heavily. We've got like an SRE style team, but they're also about improving capabilities of the delivery teams. And so they're investing in it, making everyone work faster and work better. But that capacity, much like any other capacity that you might have for product improvements, it's all about the value proposition, balancing priorities, and putting those decisions in the hands of the team so they can make good calls. That's why I think it's not about cloud, but it's about getting the capabilities and having the tools and making those tough choices within the teams about when to adopt and how.
It's interesting that you make that 25% of people's time invested into sharpening the saw and improving their capabilities. Does that lead to any sort of magic in terms of innovation and new ideas coming in?
Yeah, there's definitely a lot of fruitful things come out of that. We also have a consistent training day we run every 7 weeks, and ideas come from that. People try new ideas. So we definitely think that you've kind of got to put your money, in this case time, where your mouth is, and make sure that if you want people to improve, that they've got a clear way to do it. Not just going to say, hey, improve, but keep working on the product. It's always a trick of balancing short-term, long-term, those kind of thinking.
Yeah, great. I think I might keep you talking here, given that you've got the mic, but we'll shift more towards sort of, what sort of outcomes have you seen? What results have you gained from I guess building your product where it is, but some of that investment in your people and your teams that you felt, and maybe also some lessons, I guess. If you're looking back and you had to do it all over again, what would you do differently?
So I joined AgWorld a couple of years ago, and one of the things that we're focusing on is around, we had like a DevOps team, it was basically an ops team. So I think getting a team that's got the capability across the whole stack to improve, and that was the key thing that we set up a couple of years ago, and gave them the capacity and decision making to make improvements. And you can kind of look at the kind of things that were worked on shifted. So previously the team were looking at containerizing various things, but because we focus on capabilities of our delivery teams, they shifted focus to continuous delivery, and we kind of went from a very a long 3-week process, kind of like a 6 weeks release train process, and focus on continuous delivery. I was just checking last month, we're now at about 4 releases a day, but that's kind of just been driven by continuous improvement, not any one big thing. It's just continually improve. And it was only kind of about last week we actually finished doing containerization, but it made sense to do it at the right time for the right reasons. It wasn't just, hey, that's a cool thing, we should do it. So I think focusing on why you're doing things is really important.
Yeah, being very purposeful about that change.
Yeah.
Excellent.
And giving the teams the goals, and then they choose how.
Nice. Maybe I'll throw it back to you, Rich. Having gone through this journey, your 3rd time around, you've seen this happen a few times. What advice would you give to people who are just embarking on or considering a cloud transformation project or a business transformation project?
Sure. Again, I think the big thing is people, right? Whether it's people in the business or people in ICT, right? It's people, process, technology, and data. But the biggest thing is people. Tech just works, right? You could be in AWS. Yep. Awesome. It works. Azure. Yep. Cool. Right. GCP. Yeah, absolutely. Right. But it's the people, and to bring them along with the journey, whether it's your executives, the CEO, your CFO, especially your CFO, because that's the biggest. On the business side of the house, you're going from CapEx to OpEx, right? So what do you mean this Azure bill is never going away, right? Can I just pay it once and it'd be good for 5 years? Well, no, you can't, right? So that's a big change for the business in the way that they have to think about things. Also, what do you mean? We're doing this big digital transformation thing to automate stuff. But what do you mean you want to hire more people in IT? You can't just one person do that gig, right? So, as we shift more systems to the cloud and the bigger focus on digital transformation, then absolutely, ICT or your apps team or your SRE team, whatever you want to call it, is going to need to get a bit bigger, because you're going to actually be driving these the value to customers and the citizens. But so that's the focus, right? And the other thing is sell the story, right? So the from, to, because, right? We're going to move from infrastructure to SaaS or PaaS or IaaS, whatever, because of this, to deliver this value. That's the big thing for me, right? It's, you want to pick up 1,000 mailboxes, move to Exchange Online. Trent can do that in his sleep, right? And he'll sing you a song while he's doing it in his sleep. Not that Trent likes to talk or anything, right? But he's very good at what he does. So you can transform to the cloud quite easily. It's transforming the people is the hardest bit. And that's what I'd say from doing this 3 damn times.
Rob, what are some of the benefits you may have realized in your journey so far? So you spoke about, how you've tried to restructure the business, how you focus more on building a SaaS for your core system. Yeah, what benefits have you realized? How have you measured them, etc.?
So I think the first thing, we've talked a lot about people. Organizing people around a mission, like autonomy, mastery, purpose. Dave mentioned it earlier in terms of the secret ingredients for intrinsic motivation, not the carrot or the stick, motivation that comes from within. That was one of the big things in terms of hire smart people and then tell them what to do is not a good recipe. So very much the journey that I've been on is first simplifying engineering at Vix. We have 4 delivery centers across the world. Trying to simplify that and create processes that are aligned so people have the accountability and the authority to make good decisions. We see a lot of positive returns in employee satisfaction around that. It's actually had a really good enabling factor on changing a build-first mindset. At Vix, we're an engineering company, and we get given a problem, it's like, we can build something for that. Whereas the reality today is that there's huge optionality available in the cloud in terms of other SaaS products. And the future of development is actually integration. I hate to break it to everyone, but it's actually going to be gluing bits together. And solutions that we build will either be, some of them we'll build ourselves, but if we still then have to own the end-to-end, but understanding that it will be composition maybe from sisters or kind of sister companies or kind of, again, third parties, anything from there. So that has really shifted our approach in terms of not what can we build, but what do we need to solve and how can we experiment and iterate towards there. And then secondly, it's how we approach delivery. It is about how do we test and learn. We haven't got it in all the areas, as I mentioned before, in the core platform. It moves relatively slowly, almost akin to David's first sort of analogy of like that, every 3 weeks we crib, but then at the edge we can get far faster feedback loops so we could actually start making, instead of having a discussion and going, what will this look like when we release it? It's like, how do we make a change? We get that out, and then we actually have a graph of data to understand how the system's used. So it moves it from opinion to fact. Secondly, it's really forced us to embrace resilience versus robustness. And I think that was a big problem that we had at Vix, whereby we would try to test everything in pre-production environments. Like, do you think Facebook clone the internet when they do a release? No, they don't, right? So we talk a lot about shifting left. I think it's also then an acceptance of shifting some part of it to the right in terms of testing and production. So looking at how do you pilot, how do you do dark launches, how do you do canaries? That's a huge element of being able to move more quickly. You can move more quickly when your barrier for confidence is lower, and you can do a lot of techniques to enable you to move quicker but still safely. And if you're then following the kind of DevOps or state of the union metrics, again, deployment frequency, but percentage change fail rate, they're competing for a reason, right? One wants you to move quicker, the other one wants you to be more stable. So we have to have balanced approaches. So to sum up, definitely about getting people aligned to what matters, but then also embracing that to build a product is actually very much the same sort of thinking you need to test and learn that you do to build a resilient system in production as well. So it works both nicely on the people and technology side.
I'm curious, when you talk about moving towards that mindset of being resilient and tolerating failure in production, as an organization who probably had core systems built on older technologies and platforms, and ticketing probably needs to work pretty reliably, what sort of pushback did you get in trying to institute that change?
Listen, no one wants to get called out of bed at 3 a.m. in the morning, right? So there's a lot of self-service there. I think as a group, geez, we're very positive, aren't we? Like when we kind of go digital transformations, everyone's happy. It was rainbows and unicorns all around. Like your transformation can be incredibly successful if you don't change anything, right? Like it's one of those things that a company has a contract with an employee, and when the company wants to change, it's not going to fit everyone. So I think that's the other thing from there. We just put in, Spotify models and, good things will happen, but it's not. You have to invest in your people, but also recognize that some people will opt out, and that's okay as well. So you can't save everyone. People will move towards sort of other roles there as well. And there are no shortcuts. So like interesting what worked with Like the Spotify model, I made a deliberate decision to remove all matrix reporting lines at Vix when we moved to remote working, because I wanted line managers to work day to day with their people. And when they weren't seeing each other in the office every day, I wanted that tight connection. So you kind of have to understand, are you in the office? Are you being remote? And then how are your models and op models going to actually support that sort of long-lived sustainability? So yeah, like the Phoenix Project, amazing book. It'll teach you about the 3 ways, which will be a great starter to think about how you visualize, how you track work, and how you embed continuous improvement, as David said. But there's no best practices. Like transformations are hard, and not everyone in your organization will go for it.
You never stop transforming.
There's no destination. Yeah.
Cool. Billy, can you maybe share some of the results you've seen? So you spoke about moving certain assets and they're further along than others. You know, we've spoken about this as a journey and maybe there's no destination, but surely we'd be doing this for a reason. We'd be doing this to spark change or get some business benefit. What can you talk to there?
I think I probably picked 3 areas. So kind of organizational, technology and actual delivery and what results we've got there. And then people, which we've mentioned. So I think organizationally, this model that we've employed, it has driven kind of quicker decision making. The decision making at HBF used to be painfully slow. Moving that closer to people who actually know what's going on, the decision making is a hell of a lot quicker now. I've spoke already about the cross-functional teams, so we are starting to see that gel between business and technology, and we're seeing the results of that. And we see empowered product owners. So our product owners it was painful at the start, the matrix thing you talked about. They always seem to have to go somewhere to get a decision. And over time, we've seen that disappear. So now the product owners are empowered to make those decisions. So I think we're seeing huge organizational benefit. Like, that's all words. So technology-wise, so we delivered our new mobile app to members in March 2020. That was like the test bed. We picked a small asset first and used that as a model for the assets that we roll out from there. Since there, so tremendous success, thankfully. #1 PHI app in Australia. It started there and it stayed there for the last year. So it's 4.8 stars on kind of both app stores. And it's been the model for that continuous improvement for us. So since March 2020, we've had 16 new feature releases in that app. It would have been more. We still have the legacy that it's talking to behind the scenes. As I said, we've still got everyone else to replace. But we had 16 kind of changes since then. And we've maintained that 4.8 rating across the board. So we still are able to talk to being the #1 PHI app in Australia. And we aim to do that with every app that we roll out or every asset that we roll out. People-wise, probably the thing I'm most proud of. Yeah, we've got some good results with the tech so far. We will continue, hopefully, to get good results. But people-wise, probably the proudest thing is our AWS Cloud team. We deliberately, we handpicked the people that went into that team. We took cyber skill sets, we took networking and ops skill sets, we took developers, and we merged them all together. Then we hoped that they started to transfer their skills amongst the wider team. We did have good partners, so we had partners in there, and the team was kind of much larger than it is now when we started. But what we've seen towards the end, we've now been able to roll those partners off. We actually were able to see better output from the HBF people who had now learned the trade in cloud, and they were starting to deliver more than the partners that we had there. And we're now 100% self-sufficient in AWS Cloud. So a year and a bit kind of really into the journey. And now we have that team. So our guys are fantastic. Please don't try and take them in either. I was glad earlier I didn't invite anyone here after your little speech earlier, but there's a couple, but just leave them alone. But really, I couldn't be more proud of that team. The way that they started from nothing. We had zero cloud experience at HBF. We handpicked these guys because we knew they were good at what they did. And to watch them learn over the course of this and learn from, so we had AWS ProServe in there, we had PwC kind of flown over from East Coast. These guys have just taken it on, and then they are delivering fantastic results now. And they are now, I view a number of that team as AWS cloud experts in that short space of time. So yeah, that's been good to watch. Hopefully that transcends to Salesforce teams, etc. as well. But yeah, some good results there.
Fantastic. And now, Mark, I saw you cringe a little bit when Rich mentioned that, you know, people move to the cloud thinking that they're going to save money on runtime costs. It's not necessarily the case. You mentioned that you were going to, you had a data center refresh coming up, and you didn't want to make that investment in on-premises infrastructure. What sort of results have you seen from your cloud adoption? Have your expectations on cost been met? Have you had any surprises?
We're still kind of at the early stages of that I guess lift and shift approach, that particular migration. So the jury is still out on exactly sort of where the balance books will lie, I guess. You're right, though. It is a big change going from CapEx to OpEx. But I think we as an organization are starting to embrace change a bit more. It's happening to us, whether we like it or not. The utilities sector is changing massively, especially in Perth with, rooftop solar is having a massive impact on our model. We aren't just generate and sell electricity now. It's generate and sell and store and use and provide different solutions and services, and aggregation platforms are on the way. Distributed energy is a huge thing. So I think the like in terms of the results there, purely from a cost point of view, the jury's still out. From a people point of view, from a capability point of view, from getting comfortable with using the cloud, from the business going, oh, it's not so scary. That's been, I think, really valuable, and will continue to do so. We had, it's interesting. People have had an idea of what cloud is and what some of the things are in the cloud. We had, a colleague of mine who sort of said, wouldn't this just be all easier when it's in a data lake? And I kind of thought, well, you don't really know what a data lake is.
But it's easier.
Well, right. I'll just be able to ask it for my answer, and then I'll have the answer I need, and it'll be done. I'm like, whoa. Fortunately, what we have done is actually, produce an analytics platform in the cloud that Javier's here somewhere. There he is. Yeah, speak to him about it. It's his baby. He's driven it. And again, this has been around some of that organic growth. We've been lucky enough to have, and I don't know if it's just fortuitous, but sometimes the right people in the right place within the organization that have gone, actually, let's change that. Let's transform and go forward. As I say, the results vary. They're very different. The pure numbers side of things, i.e. cost numbers, that jury is still out. But ask me again in a year's time, and if I still have my job, you'll know the answer.
Well, besides asking you for that in a year's time, what are your future plans for your platform, for the organization? As you've sort of started this journey, what do you see next on the horizon?
Well, I think, as I mentioned, change is happening to us. Utilities, electricity providers, generators, it's hugely different. A big thing that we're moving towards is, the state government's distributed energy roadmap, which, if you don't know it, it's a really exciting document that talks about photovoltaic cells and batteries here and everywhere, and it's going to be wonderful. But it's also going to be really difficult to build and implement and so on. So a big push that we're going to have is around aggregating assets. Generation is no longer just a big power plant down in the southwest. It's actually your car. You can plug your car in at home and suddenly you have a battery. You have photovoltaic cells on the roof, but that actually means that we have so much energy that what we really want you to do is turn on your air conditioner and turn on your pool pump. So if you can let us control when that happens and aggregate those resources, they are now electricity resources because they're consumers, and consuming at the right time is going to be really, really important. So the distributed energy roadmap isn't just around generation, it's around storage and use as well. In terms of how that relates to the cloud and to all of what we've talked about tonight, you can't do that without the Internet of Things. We are going to be wanting to connect to your home. That's a big ask. So we really need to make sure that we sort of have the right building blocks in place to be able to say, we know we can do it. We have the right capability, we have the right people. This is how it's going to work, and these are the benefits you'll see from it. So it's a huge challenge ahead, and it's very different to some of what we've talked about here, because we are starting down that journey of building products that are more software and engineering products we aren't just generating electricity and selling you electrons now, where it's going to be around that product and that service model. So it's a big change, and that's where it's going to be, beneficial to have that.
That's super interesting. I look forward to you coming back and telling us about that at some point.
Hope so.
Awesome. I'd probably just want to sort of tail it off with everyone's sort of comments on what's next steps, etc. And then what we'll do is invite people in the audience to ask a few questions. So maybe if we just go around and sort of talk about what's next on the roadmap or on the horizon. What do you think is interesting in terms of opportunities that cloud presents to your business, to your next steps? Yeah, or any other parting thoughts?
Because our journey is a continuous one, it's whatever makes the most sense next. Whatever we can do and what capability we can improve is where we'll be focusing. We're looking a bit more on the SRE side and trying to get better at that. It's one area we're focusing on right now, and that'll shift over time where we focus, and cloud will just play its part, mostly because it's a programmable infrastructure and you can get it to do what you want.
Does anything excite you on various vendors' roadmaps or anything like that, or any opportunities that you think could be interesting for your customers?
Our customers, they just want really reliable, easy to use software that helps them run their farm business. And there's definitely a lot that we're looking at from an integrations point of view, kind of like to Rob's point, there's a lot going on there. And it kind of intersects with IoT to a degree as well. So there's a lot of technology coming into the space, and that's where that's really interesting, how we get the best and most for our customers in that sense.
Cool.
Yeah.
We're out of energy.
That's Mark controlling.
We have to keep the lights on.
How about you, Billy?
So next steps for us, next month we go live with our data and analytics platform. So it's a combination of Snowflake and AWS native data services. From there, next year we are going live with some of those SaaS applications, so like Salesforce, and the new ways of working that we need to roll out, which is, so we've proven this model. We do like the model, and now we need to expand it. And I spoke earlier about bringing BAU and the transformation back together into the new ways of working. What excites me, so we're very MVP focused. So we've got applications there. So we use Siebel at the moment. We have an old mainframe. That's how long it's been since HBF invested. That's why we're going hard at this. So we've got almost 15 years worth of development to replace in kind of less than 2. So very much MVP focus. And what excites me is the roadmap of companies like Salesforce. So just being able to leverage some of the things that they're doing and the partnerships with Amazon and Salesforce are exciting. I can't wait to get there. Right now, we just need to kind of replace what we have, improve it, but replace it. Make sure the current functionality is available when we cut over. And then we get to those real value add kind of, we call it plus ones, which is kind of where we want to get to. So excited for that. Right now, we need to get the assets, and the next one is data and analytics next month.
Fantastic. Rob?
Yeah, so from a transport perspective, like mobility as a service is the next big thing. So imagine having your transport car just a little bit smarter, but you could catch an Uber, you could catch a Lyft scooter, you could catch a train, all with the same daily cap. You can have it through an NFC digital wallet if you wanted to pay for it as well. That's actually requiring quite a lot of rethinking in terms of how we re-architect the product. And it's actually quite a good forcing function that, again, don't refactor everything on day one. If it's not going to change a lot, it's actually justified to stick it in the cloud. Then when you actually have a concrete need, then start shaving off slices of functionality, get the interfaces in first, and then do it incrementally. So over the course of the last 5 years, we've been in heavy build. So we've been looking at building out the breadth of the capabilities. Very much my focus over the next year is about simplification, both simplification in terms of org structures, development centers, processes. Again, looking to get as much of the context and decisions down into the teams as possible, enabling people to make good local decisions. And really, as a leader, my role is to create an environment which encourages the behavior I'd like to see, not command and control. We often forget that, right? but huge focus on open telemetry. So again, looking at our services as well. We're strong in logging, not so great with distributed tracing. I think again, open census, open tracing, they'll kind of be merged, and open telemetry is a huge step forward. Looking at, I'm really excited with what Honeycomb are doing in terms of the observability space with high cardinality wide events. And again, you're looking at an aggregate data source like a metric straight away that you can then reverse back into an event. I think we all have a lot to learn because again, if we're working in the cloud, shit will break outside of your control. Like any sort of semblance of that I control everything is a fallacy. So again, 8 fallacies of distributed computing, get familiar with them, stuff will happen, and then how do you design your system around it? Chaos engineering is again something that I spoke about quite a bit when I was at Tetra Purple, great company. But again, it's something that we hadn't really embedded, and there's no better way of testing your systems to actually break them. So we've started playing with some of the Simeon Army functionality as well. We're still fairly nascent in our journey there, but that's again something that we're really excited about being able to kind of prove out the guardrails and the compliance and those automated controls earlier in the process. So a little bit about product, but a lot, I guess, of maybe the gaps in what we do today. If it sounds interesting, come chat to me.
Nice.
Wow, as a government agency, I can't ever imagine launching Chaos Monkey. I would get fired in like a day, no doubt. Look, for DWOR's perspective, we're just kicking off a 3-year transformation program with everything with CRM, data lakes. We just launched our data lake as a CI/CD type process, but a big business transformation to deliver benefit to the citizens, right? To get economic projects up and working sooner, and all the red tape stuff, and get rid of that. But it's really exciting with the business to be working with them to do that. So that's going to be a really massive program. Aside from that, what really excites me is the edge compute space, right? So as an agency, we have tons and tons, and we're going to have more sensors for water, right? So for water or air pollution, if there's a fire somewhere, then our EPA first responders go out and they're measuring that, the pollutants in the air. So how can we use edge compute to our advantage and do that processing there on the spot after it's been trained in the cloud, and then send the interesting stuff up to the cloud, or the water level sensors, all that kind of stuff on the edge compute, is the really exciting thing to me, because it's not. It is really transforming the way that we're delivering services with DevOps and edge compute and all that really cool stuff. So that's what really kind of excites me.
Brilliant. I'll turn to the audience just to see if anyone's got some questions. I'm going to grab one of the mics and I'll run around to the question asker. What I may ask is if you direct your question to one of the individuals, and also while I do that, I'll take a couple of photos as well, just to prove that we were here. So, got a volunteer. So anyone with a question, Shan? Mate, I'll grab you the mic so we can get on the recording.
Sure. I've actually got a question for the whole panel, if that's all right.
Sure.
It's a really good conversation today about some of the transformation challenges and focusing on the people and capabilities. I think one thing that we haven't really talked about is what are some of the risks involved that you might have considered or had to face into, particularly because when you shift to the cloud, you have to deal with things like data sovereignty, cybersecurity. Particularly interested, given the composition of the panel, we've got people from government entities, critical infrastructure, and so on. When it comes to risk management, these are fairly critical conversations to have in a cloud transformation. So are there any comments you can share around that?
From a government perspective, I've had many conversations with the Office of Digital Government in the cybersecurity space. It's an old wives' tale, by the way, that data can't leave Western Australia. Just saying. Even though there's some agencies that actually used to think that, there's actually not really a black and white requirement for it to stay in Australia, as long as you do the correct risk assessment, right? And then it's documented and the business accepts the risk and all that, which is actually really easy to do, because I think in the cybersecurity space, moving to the cloud, we're actually increasing our cybersecurity and lowering our risk, as long as we're doing it in the right way, right? So you leave an S3 bucket open, right? Or you leave a blob storage account open, and the cloud is absolutely unsecure, right? Absolutely. But that's not AWS's fault. That's not Microsoft's fault. That's your fault for being stupid, right? For not doing the best practice kind of stuff. From a cybersecurity thing, so we use Azure Arc, right? So that's controlling your on-prem services from the cloud, right? So we moved our management plane to the cloud. Oh my God, right? Because now I can see with Azure Security Center or whatever, all these things, these misconfigurations that we've had on-prem that have been there for years that I didn't know about, right? So I would say we're actually increasing our cybersecurity in that space, as long as we do it correctly, and just make sure you do your risk assessments.
I think it also depends a lot on what workloads you're moving to the cloud. So at Vix, we have some of our offerings are multi-tenanted, and other are single-tenanted, and it does require a lot of maturity in terms of design. So if it's single-tenanted, I can put a lot of the security actually at the cloud formation layer, bake it into the infrastructure itself. If it's multi-tenanted, I then have to think about, do I have a tenant ID as a discriminator? Then do I have different databases per tenant? Do I have different schemas? Do I just have, again, a row level security? There's a lot of trade-offs, particularly that if you have dynamic tiering and you have a bronze level tenant, and to avoid noisy neighbor, you want to promote that, and you have to copy out the infrastructure as well as. So if you're moving like COTS applications, that's quite easy. Again, you'll get a lot of the benefits for the platform, but a lot of the sharp edges I found are around multi-tenanted SaaS. That's a whole new set of skills that you could cut yourself on if you just kind of wade into it. Again, I do see a lot of companies just jumping in with kind of data lakes now. I think Snowflake has made it accessible for everyone. Cost can be a massive spiral with that as well. If it's like, just gather all the data in there, because if we have data, we'll somehow be able to catalog it and get information. If we have information, oh my goodness, the insights. Yeah, I think that's a little bit of a fallacy, and I still think you should be relatively judicious. I'd echo your points around edge computing as well. Again, that's a big area for us. So at Vix, we have, so in Brussels, I think about 13,000 validators like running out on buses. So that's a lot of telemetry data kind of coming in as well. Definitely with some of our monitoring on that kind of signal to noise ratio is a bit of an issue as well. If there's more that we could do from there, that would be streaming it. But yeah, my big call out is look at your workloads. If you're building anything to do with SaaS applications, then you have to really look at your security in particular and say whether you could bake it in at the infrastructure layer or whether you have to go runtime, because yeah, it makes a big difference.
Yeah, I could probably talk about risks all night if anyone wants to talk about it. I'll probably just land on 2 or 3. I think if anyone's just starting the cloud journey, just don't believe what you'll hear from partners and vendors about how quick it could be. If you're a regulated entity like we are, so in insurance, we're regulated by APRA. Production workloads cannot happen until we are CPS 234 compliant, and there's an amazing amount of work that has to be done when you're starting from scratch. So you're taking your infrastructure, you're moving everything, and you're building everything on cloud. And there's an amazing amount of effort that has to go into that. We are ready now, but don't believe that you can do this in 3 to 6 months. There's just no way. Kind of in a similar kind of fashion, I'd say if you have got multiple things that you need to replace or build, don't try and do it at once. We're okay doing like applications at once, so we're kind of in a fine state now, but don't try and do that at the same time as you're trying to establish your base level infrastructure on cloud. The demand and the pressure on our cloud team at the beginning was not nice to watch. So although I'm really proud of the guys now, they had a baptism of fire, right? They were just on the end of the dependencies across every single squad that we had. So really start with the cloud-based infrastructure first, give a runway, start thinking about the services you need from that cloud platform and onboard them correctly so that when the application teams come on board, that they're ready and they're ready there for them. That would be the second one. Last one, burned a couple of times by it now, not too dramatic, thankfully, but billing. Make sure you've got, even if you're not kind of full production workloads, the second you've got people working in there, the second you have a chance of error that will lead to kind of billing overrun, etc. So you need to make sure your alerts are in place. Ours were. You need to make sure that they're acted on very, very quickly, to make sure you don't actually blow those costs. I think Rich said it. Cloud can be more cost effective, but it can also be expensive if you let some of that kind of run. So there would be three. There's more, but I'll leave it at that.
I mean, I've got nothing specific to add around security other than, I guess, whether you're a cloud or not, there's way more important things that you need to consider for security.
So just around a risk that we weren't expecting to face. Turns out our data was awful. Our understanding about what we had to lift and shift was really, really bad. And it almost derailed that lift and shift project to a degree, because we thought, all right, we're learning, we're going to do the low-hanging fruit, the small fry things. Lots of little utility servers, the infrastructure team uses that to monitor this. Cool, we'll move it up. No, turns out they haven't used that to monitor that for years. And now it's a build agent for one of our DevOps pipelines that, because the IP address changed and someone hard-coded that IP address, fell over. And so we skipped a release because of that. And, your own internal data and your own internal sort of quality of that and the rigor around that can be a risk. So really have a good idea of what you're moving before you even think about moving it. So that would be my advice on that.
Cool. Any other questions? And I'm assuming we've got time for a few more if you guys are comfortable. We have hit 7 o'clock. Absolutely. Who else needs a drink?
Oh.
I've got a question for Rich. Recently rejoined a department agency that shall remain nameless. And unfortunately, we hadn't had someone like you to drive that digital transformation and the cloud transformation. So,
Is it the cloud is scary, the cloud is bad, the cloud is not safe?
no, it's so that journey has begun. But my big question to you was about how you approached that CapEx versus OpEx argument with the CFO. I'm not in those circles to chat to them directly, but it's typically, 1 month before budget, end of financial year, someone puts a finger in the air and goes, right, we're going to deliver this for X dollars, and it never works.
Yeah,
so that in government.
It is pretty interesting, right? So there's I'll tell you a funny story where I just got it absolutely handed to me by our CEO when I was CIO at Venues West. We were moving to GovNext, right? For certainly not for storage and compute, that was going to public cloud, right? But for networking. And he wanted to see the numbers, and I just did a really poor job, right off the, just numbers on the back of an envelope. And I presented that, and I got my butt handed to me in really short fashion. So then I had our CFO says, Rich, how come you didn't come and talk to me? And we sat down and we did the numbers. He's like, I know what, the CEO wants to see. So we did the numbers properly this time, right? Not just Rich trying to be lazy and say, it's IT, it's good. And then it just kind of rolled through. So I think there's little understanding in government around the TCO of what it is for a data center, right? Or in my case, a containerized data center. There's little understanding of what that total cost of ownership is. So we had to actually put it on paper and to where it made sense, which is hard to do. It's hard work. As far as, software as a service, we kind of sell not so much the cost, but the benefits, right? So we at where we have Microsoft 365, right? So we sell the benefits of Microsoft 365 in that entire space versus, yeah, well, we're paying every year because it's software as a service. So yeah, for TCO, for cloud stuff, there are some good calculators out there. Yeah, but it's hard work, and there's not a big understanding around it. But find a good CFO to help you.
Ed?
Thanks very much. So yeah, we heard a lot about change, particularly in the way the software is being delivered and the way you're working. We know cloud's obviously evolving very fast as well. What about the skill sets you need to deliver that work? What have you found been missing the most? Is there any particular skill sets or areas that have been a challenge to get hold of for the people?
Yeah, I think there's a big misnomer in our industry that there's a skill shortage at Perth. I think fundamentally there's a skill shortage, right? There's not, hundreds of people who you can suddenly hire. It's definitely the strategy I followed at Vix, and the one I would recommend is invest in being able to grow your people. So particularly, we saw infrastructure as code as being one of the big changes that we need to make first in our first generation. That was with Puppet. Then it was onto cloud formation scripts, and most recently CDK. So again, we've seen huge value in having the higher level abstraction around modeling all the infrastructure using CDK. But we did a lot of work then in terms of set-based design between that and Pulumi. So definitely the infrastructure as code was one. A lot of it was actually approach and thought about it in terms of like robustness versus resiliency, as I mentioned before. Security becomes table stakes. Integration was huge in terms, particularly asynchronous communication. Our teams were quite good at, I can stick 7 APIs together and wait multiplicative effective downtime, right? It's nowhere near the 5 nines that I wanted or even 4 nines. So again, asynchronous communication. So looking at messaging. So we use Kafka as a messaging backplane. Again, that provides a huge amount of ability for streaming applications. We were crap at them. It took a lot of energy to sort of think about data or sort of turning your database inside out and thinking about how you can calculate kind of real time as well. Completely different skills that we didn't have before. And again, if you look at it from a testing perspective, again, we were kind of failing to apply a lot of, I guess, the long-lived soak tests. That's probably one of the big advices from there, that we did performance testing. But if you look at what AWS do, while they have continuous delivery, they would, for AppMesh, for instance, they will put a lot of their front rate servers just in an environment for 3 days and just hammer it with traffic, see that there's no memory leaks or other abnormal behavior. And then if it all passes, then it will go into production automatically. So there's still zero touch. But in terms of that long-lived soak testing and how you fit that into a CI/CD process was, again, a lot of that sort of mindset piece. So that's workshops, internal training. I could go on at length in terms of how you incentivize training, aligned learning opportunities and things. But we hire grads now, which is something we didn't do 3 years ago. Like fundamentally, like as in FY22, sorry, everyone, I will only be hiring grads. But then that's going to promote. If the rest of it is internal, so if you're a software engineer, then you have to leave room to be able to promote your internal people. So it's very much the view of how do we build learning material, how do we provide something to reduce the time to value when they join the company. And that's valuable not just new to the company, but if you've got to rotate between teams, super effective as well. But yeah, don't try to buy in. That you can rent it from partners, they'll help get you there, but long term you have to grow your people.
Cool. Maybe one more.
Yeah, I got one. So earlier on, okay. Earlier on, you were talking about the cost argument for the cloud, and that's sort of been pushed to the side, and it's more now about productivity. I think that's sort of pretty well accepted amongst IT, and I think it's always pretty well been accepted amongst those that know. How ubiquitously accepted is it in business now? Do they just say, yep, completely agree? Or do you have to win them over? And is that argument still a hard one to win, and it's easier to go back to the cost argument sometimes?
So for us, again, I've been lucky. Our GM for transformation technology has been very patient with the idea that cloud is going to cost, and has sort of owned that. And the advantage there is it's I guess for want of a better term, a sort of high stakes individual in the organization who is going, the cost is one thing, but the benefits are what we're really talking about. So I guess we've been lucky in that space. Traditionally, the TNT division has owned the cost of infrastructure. And so they've continued down that route. So we still own the cost. So your brand new, shiny, cloud-based application, you don't need to worry right now how much that costs. Incidentally, here's a report on what I'm paying for it for. So it is costing money, but look at the benefits you're getting out of it. But don't worry about the cost right now. Now, are we going to move to more of a chargeback model? Because, we do have different department budgets, and, I don't know half of the complexity of how our sort of setup is and the budgets there. We're looking into it. We may well do down the track. But for now, I think that the buy-in from the top has been really important. How you sell that buy-in to the top, I'm afraid I don't know. That was done before I joined. But, that is really important. It has been for us anyway.
I think I'll go slightly different just to be controversial then. I'm not completely sold that the cost benefits are not there yet.
Yeah, I don't think.
I think, are there or not there? So I think, compute, storage, it's like for like. So you do not position this as that you're going to save money that way. But if you get your infrastructure as code right, you get your automation right, then there's cost benefits there. So there is time saving from people doing manual tasks across the board. So I do think there's cost benefits to be had. It's a long way to get there, but I do think overall, target state, there will be cost benefits of a cloud model. Would be a view.
I think the question's a bit broken. If you're getting it because it's still very transactional, one of the biggest shifts that if you get your team structures around business value, then it becomes about worth. It becomes about value. Again, so one of the things that we're actively looking at now is actually moving P&L into each one of the channel app lines as well, such that the product owner feels the benefit of good decisions, but also the pain of bad decisions. So again, if you focus on breadth of features, but not about the operability of it, then you will see the price of that as well. So again, if you're looking at those models, make sure you're building a structure that is just, so that the people feel the benefit or the pain of those decisions, rather than have all the costs sitting with IT where there's no real driver or incentive to behave it the way you'd like people to do. So you reap what you sow. The biggest thing though, if it's about cost versus value, or cost versus, is it cheaper or more expensive, then you have to talk in terms of business value and speed, agility, resilience. They're all the things that come into it. And I think, you're looking at a very complex question and boiling it down to just one facet.
It's very complex, and it's a tough point to make to business, a tough idea to get across. And I think it takes time for that idea to...
You need a different metric. So choose NPS, choose whatever you want that is actually then the guide, the North Star that will drive everyone behind, rather than looking at one diagnostic, because cost is a diagnostic, it's not a metric.
Yeah, no, I think you're falling back if you go back to cost arguments.
I won't then.
All right. Well, if anyone's got any other questions, I'd probably encourage you to stick around, have a drink, network with the individuals here. But I think we'll call it there. If you join me in giving a round of applause to our panelists, thank you very much for your time, Jamie. Really appreciate it. And thank you for coming along. I think it's been a great night. Great to see so many faces again in person in 3D. Hope you enjoyed it. Stick around, have a drink, and a bit of a chinwag. Thank you. Cheers.